Okay, this is a quick demo on how to create a digital draft off of your refined sketch. This is the Canvas assignment that we are working off of. This is the demo that you clicked on. So at this point you have a very clean sketch. You hopefully traced over it one last time on a blank piece of paper with a fine-tipped Sharpie or a strong pencil or pen. Took a picture of it or scanned it on the printer and got it to yourself on the computer. We're going to open this image file in Photoshop. So that is what I have right here. My final tip before you move any further forward is if your sketch does not have the black frame, draw it in right now with the brush tool so that you have a square that you're working with and that your animal edge hits the edge of the frame here and here. If you have something that looks like this, your job is going to be much harder. Alright, so we're all here in Photoshop. First thing I'm going to do is just crop the frame to really just focus on the one that I plan on using. So I'm going to use this crop tool on the left. I can pull the corners in closer just to get, the part that I'm working with. That will work. Check. Alright, so this is what we're working with here. This sketch has pretty good contrast. There's just really black and white, as you can see. If your sketch is rather gray, you're going to want to increase the level so that it's much more just black and white. You don't want a lot of grays in there. You would do that by going up under Image, Adjustments, and we want to do Levels. You would move these sliders to create more contrast. You can see as I pull that slider all the way over, you get more black. This one will get you more white. And you're looking for something that looks fairly black and white. This is the center channel. Okay, so you can see how that's changing. Alright, so you want something that looks pretty good like this one. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to just use the magnifying glass and zoom in a little bit. And any sort of like extra black marks that you definitely don't want, we're going to erase. You can either use the eraser or you can just use a white brush. Both of them are going to do the exact same thing. I want a pretty hard brush, not a blurry brush. And I want the size to be a lot smaller. That's good. Alright, so now I can just erase like this because I don't need those little random ink smudges. I don't need this. Alright, so I'm just holding down the spacebar key to get to the hand so that I can click and drag and sort of like move my frame around so that I can see what I'm dealing with here. Just kind of cleaning stuff up a little bit. Alright, great. I'll just erase this too. Doesn't probably matter. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to zoom back out. Holding down Alt or Option gets you zoomed back out. Okay, so this is a good, clean scan that I can take into Illustrator and do an image trace on. So I'm going to save this. Symbol, trace, sample. We're just going to call it use. I'm going to hit save. It can be any kind of image file. It does not matter. Alright, so now I'm going to close out of Photoshop. I'm going to open up Illustrator. I'm going to open that JPEG. Use. Okay, open. Alright, so here we are. My artboard's just a weird size because of the last thing I was doing. Sorry. It doesn't really matter what size your artboard is right now. Okay, there, that looks more normal. Okay, so here's our JPEG. And now we're going to create a vector file off of this. If you're in Computer Art Studio, you might have learned how you can like lock down this layer and use the pen tool to redraw the shape, and you can totally do that. But we're going to use a different tool that's going to make this happen a little bit faster, and it's called the Image Trace panel. So I'm going to click on the JPEG so it's selected, and you can see up here it does say Image Trace, but I'm going to open the whole panel. So under Window, Image Trace, this is the Image Trace panel. So if I click on preview right here, it will show me how it's going to vectorize this. And that looks pretty good. So we want the mode to be Black and white, you know, probably whatever the default is going to look pretty good, but if you want to kind of mess around with it, you can kind of pull some of these sliders and you will see it change. You just got to give it a second. So now it looks a lot rougher, right? Pull it back up. And you can kind of mess with any of these other levels until you're kind of happy with how smooth the lines look and hopefully how accurate to your sketch. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. I want to make sure I'm creating fills. I don't really necessarily need strokes, so I'm going to keep that one checked off. And you can even choose to ignore a certain color if you want. So if you want to like ignore the color white, you'll just get the black fills. And that might make this easier if you want to try that. Otherwise, I'm going to leave that off because I think I'm just going to fill this white shape in black and call it good. All right. So once you're happy with how this is looking in preview, because preview is checked on, we're going to hit expand. And now all of a sudden, this is a vector object. So it's grouped, so I need to ungroup it first. Object, ungroup. And you can see my layers panel now. I have a whole bunch of paths, no more JPEG image. And the easiest thing to do is kind of like click and kind of drag on some of these things and see what they are. So I don't need that. I'm also going to create another layer that I'm going to just make a square. And I'm going to make this square any color that is not black or white. I'm going to move the square underneath. So I'm just going to lock that down. It's just easier to see what is actually a shape that's white versus what is transparent. All right, so let's see what we got here. So what we really want is this guy to be black. We want the eyeball to be white. We don't necessarily need this frame. All right, that's looking pretty good. So I'm already pretty close. I can use the white arrow to kind of like click and drag some of these extra shapes that I don't need to get rid of those. Other things I can do, since this square that I drew, I don't necessarily love, I can make a more perfect square, right? Everyone knows how to make squares at this point in this class. We're all square making experts. So I'm going to hold the shift key and like make an actual square and really position this is a Ethiopian wolf if you were wondering, exactly into a frame that I like. I'm going to lock that frame down too. So that's my frame. This is the FPO layer. All right, this is our working layer. All right, so now I can delete a lot of this. So that you can see this is attached to my wolf shape. So I'm going to want to just use the white arrow. I can highlight certain points and hit delete. And that will kind of do something, but maybe that looks scary to you. So another way we can do it, so I can zoom in a little bit. What I want to do is I'm going to use Pathfinder. I'm going to use the pen tool. I'm going to add, let's see, first we're going to join all of these things together with the Pathfinder. So now I have one big shape, which will make, when I delete stuff, a lot less scary looking. So, oops, not that. I want to delete that line and that line. And that line. So I'm just kind of deleting, I'm going to hide my frame. I'm just deleting some extra points that I don't want. So I don't want any of these. It looks really scary, but it's going to work out. There we go. All right, that's pretty good. So now I can delete those. If I zoom out, turn the frame back on. All right, so I don't need any of this. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now I can use this pen tool to grab the edge of my shape and send it over to the edge like this. And then when you get the circle by the pen, that means you're connecting the shape. So now I have a full shape. Perfect. So there's my wolf. Looks pretty good. Now I can kind of zoom in and like clean up any of these extra points that maybe look a little ratty by deleting. You gotta get on the white circle to deleting any of these extra points I don't want. You zoom in so it's easier. There we go. He looks pretty good. Another thing, the eye maybe doesn't look perfect, but I have a good tip for that too. So at this point, I'm going to save this as an Illustrator file. Save. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do, so right now you've got your image, your animal image traced. It's an Illustrator file, so now the rest of your job is really just to clean this up and make it look as perfect as possible. And as we said before, the one thing we're going to do is judge our pictograms based on the other pictograms in the set. So I am going to place in here by just going to File, Place, that poster that we have been staring at. Because if I put him in here, now I can really compare my guy to all of these guys. All right, which I think is super helpful. Another thing I can do now is I can just kind of copy one of these eyeballs to put on my guy. So my guy's eyeball looks really good. So I'm just going to make a shape that as closely as I can matches what's happening over here. Oops. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. Zoom back out. Take this eyeball over here. I'm going to turn it white for a second. It's got to be. If I hold shift, I can make it bigger proportionately. I'm going to kind of stick it over here where I think it goes. Now I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to delete this one, and then I'm going to do paste in place so it's exactly where it was. And then I actually don't want a white eye necessarily, but I want the body of this wolf to be see-through. So I'm going to select both these things. I'm going to go back to my Pathfinder, and I'm going to minus the front shape from the back shape like that. And now the eye is see-through and not just white, which is part of why this square is helpful. All right, so this is maybe like a little ratty. I could probably clean some of this up. The less points you have, or these white squares, the smoother your strokes will look. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. So let's say I like that. One way I can test if I really like it is to drag her. I'm going to make a copy. Drag it over here, and I'm going to shrink it down, and I'm going to stick it in a box next to maybe some of the other animals that I think it's very similar to, like this wolf and this lion. So if I come up in here, I'm going to put this poster down on my FPO layer, and I'm also going to make a box to hide the tiger. So I'm going to try to make this box like the same size as the tiger's box, and then I'm going to round the corners by pulling it on these dots, and that feels very similar in shape. All right, so let's lock all that down so we stop selecting it. Here's my wolf. Shrink him down. I'm going to line up the corners. Shrink him down to where I think he would fit, like there. And now I can kind of really make a judgment call, like how close does my wolf look like to the rest of the set? And how much does he really look like my actual wolf? And you know, maybe I think the eye's a little too big, or maybe I want to like fix his body shape or something. So I can come back over to my real one and make some edits. and copy it over and do the same activity again and really make sure that it looks good in this space. So that way I know I'm going to get a really good grade. So that's what we're going to do, back and forth until you're 100% happy. Okay, so now I've gone back and forth a few times and I am 100% happy with how my wolf is looking down here. I ended up just making some minor adjustments to his eye, like actually like in place down here when I could really compare it to the other animals. And I feel like this wolf is great. I like his placement in the shape. So this is my final pictogram I want to turn in. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to end up getting rid of this stuff, and I'm going to use this guy and this orange square as my like final thing I want to turn in. So select the wolf, select this orange box. I'm going to hold Alt and drag a copy up here. Now the Canvas assignment is asking for a 6x6 inch pictogram, so I'm going to hit the Canvas tool. Oh, let's get out of centimeters for a second. That will help everybody. Okay. Here we go. Alright, so we need 6x6 inches, so I'm going to have to make my guy a lot bigger. I need this box and this guy both on the blue frame. Goes behind the wolf. Alright, so I'm looking for a white animal on a black square. I don't need rounded corners to turn it in, so I'm going to just pull those circles back out to make square corners again. Got both things selected, and I can just make this 6x6, and it should fit in this box nicely, and it pretty much does. I think I want to split the difference on the frame height. Okay. Alright, so I don't need this colored square anymore. I've got a white animal on a black background. I can 6x6 inches. I'm going to save this, make PDF, and turn it into Canvas for a critique. And that's it. So great job, everybody.